I'd like to say peace and blessings to all, for there is none higher nor more wiser than I, and without I, we are nothing. As I'll always state in the beginning, that when I speak of I, I'm speaking of the who you may call the Holy Spirit, the creator of the universe, the source of energy or current that runs through our body to give us the power to move and do what we do throughout this universe daily. So when Jesus came, when Moses came, they spoke of I. They spoke of who you call I am. So that is who I teach about, who I is. I want you to know the name of the Creator. No longer shall we carry titles. No longer shall we use false names for the spirit of I. All right, there's no more terms of a Holy Ghost. There's no need for a Holy Ghost because I is no longer going to be that ghost that they talked about it. The reason why they called I the Holy Ghost because I is always unseen, but the works of I is seen. I had a beautiful time yesterday. I must admit, I had a lot on my heart, and as I stated, when I come to speak, I speak from my heart. So if I ever say anything that I'm saying is not accurate to what I'm speaking about, it's probably because my brain isn't computing what my mouth was supposed to say at that point in time. So please forgive me, because I'll go back and look at some of the classes and I'll see where I said one thing and I should have said another thing. For instance, I was teaching about Ishmael and Isaac, and I said that, and this is on another class, and I said that Isaac was sent out into the wilderness with Hagar, when I absolutely know it was Ishmael that was sent out. So, things like that may occur, and I do apologize for that ahead of time. It's not intentional, obviously, because my quest and my goal is to do everything in my power to do, one, be truthful, which would lead to always trying to be as right as possible. All right, today's conversation, it's two parts. The first part is when Jesus said that he comes to the people and his yoke is easy, but his burden was light. And I just wanted to expound on that a little bit to give you a greater understanding of what that means. At the time, the people who labored and laden is the verse prior to that, is what it says. The labor is the sins that we're laboring in, which causes the iniquities in our world to, we wonder why things aren't always going right, why we're not living a prosperous life, why we keep going through these emotional states within ourselves. That's the form of laboring, all right? And the laden part of it is something that we're, laden means laid in, means we're living in it. So we must come out of that sin that we're living in. So you're laboring in sin, which means laboring and laden, meaning you're laying in your sin. You have to get up out of your sin. All right? And by getting up out of your sin is when you must become conscious to what you're doing and be accountable for everything that you're doing. All right? Basically, in this day and this age, especially in the Christian world, what they'll do is they'll say, well, as long as we say praise Jesus, then we're freed from that sin. You're not freed from a sin until you give that sin back and never do it again. So you're never free from it. Let's get that clear. So if you're someone that drinks alcohol, if you're someone that fornicates, if you're someone that uses cocaine, well, these are sins. There are many sins, but let's just start with these. If you're someone that's robbing and stealing, we're doing sins here. If you continue to do those sins, I don't care how many times you request to say, well, in the name of Jesus, free me from these sins, and you continue to do them, then what you basically was doing was for naught, because you're still doing it. So, that's why it says, they speak from their mouth, but their heart is far away. So we have to stop, speaking something and your heart's not in it. Put your heart in it so you can change as a person. Now, I want to talk about the part when Jesus says, my yoke is easy, but my burden is light. So what Jesus was saying to the people is he was saying, what I'm connected to, my yoke, take of my yoke. The yoke that Jesus is talking about is who I teach of, who is I, whom you may call the Holy Spirit. All right. Some of you you refer to I as God. So I is above all. You'll hear people talk about the all-seeing I. So what Jesus was referring to when Jesus said, and as I'll say to you, as Jesus said, my yoke is easy. What I'm connected to is I. I've tapped into the source of I. Those of you that know anything about what is called Ohm's law, the letter I in Ohm's law stands for current. Before anything can get its voltage and its power to really start moving it, it must use the current to produce the voltage. Now, there's ways that you can go around it through a resistor where you're blocking it, but then you're getting less voltage. All right? But the current is what's in our bodies that makes us the voltage, which makes us the producer of the energy here. We're the worker. All right? So, as I was stating, when Jesus says, my yoke is easy, what Jesus is saying is connect to what my source is. And the source is I. That's why you say me, myself, and I. Whenever you say and, it's no longer you. And everyone says and I in whatever language you may use. In Spanish, they'll say me. That means I. In Arabic, they'll say el. That means I. And so on. So I is put forth in all languages. Now then Jesus talks about, he says, and my burden is light. Okay? And what that light is that he's referring to is the truth that lives within him. That's why it says never cover your light or your candle with a wicker bush lest your light go out. You put the candle on top of the wicker bush so people can see your light. All right? So your light, as I'm teaching right now and I'm sharing right now, I'm sharing the light that's within me. So the only way you can know what's thought of in my mind or where my source of energy comes from is when I begin to speak to you and when I begin to share with you what's within my thought process that is given to me from I. See, I can't take credit for any of that. Everything that I speak of, everything that I'm taught of, it comes from my source, who is I. And when I say I'm not referring to myself. Even Jesus said it in a word that talks about when you see a man that's not speaking of himself. See, I'm not speaking of myself when I speak of I. I'm speaking of I. There's only one I. That is what is called our common denominator. We are all numerators. And the only way we will become whole as a people is when we all know that I is the creator of the entire universe. But that I lives in each and every one of us. Now, everyone won't let I awaken in them. Because some people have what is called that me in them. That meism, that ego. And that ego is what's going to stop you from letting I produce self, which is yourself, to know who you are, so you can then become a living soul. but you want to know who self is. Right now, we've been brought here, especially the black people that were brought through slaves. We've been brought here and we have no idea who we are. We don't have our original names. We don't have our original language. So we've been broken as a people. But then there would be a time where this people would come back and regain who they were and become to understand the wisdom and knowledge of where they come from. But you have to understand this. If you're giving that wisdom and that knowledge, then you must change from the wickedness you were given also. You can't take that baggage in to the what is called the hereafter, the here and now. There's a statement in the Bible also where Jesus talks about, or not Jesus, I'm not sure who it is, but they talk about it's easier for, and it could be Jesus, it's easier for a camel to go through an eye of a needle than a rich man to get through the eye. And what that basically is talking about, over in Kemet, Africa, or Egypt, whichever name you want to call it, there's literally a needle-shaped passageway that they travel. You can go in the dictionary, go online and look this up, that they travel. And when rich men come to travel through there with their camels at that time, they had to unload the camel of all their riches for the camel to go through the eye of the needle. And basically what that's saying is you have to unload the baggage for you to get through the eye of the needle, to pass through the passageway. So in essence, all of this stuff that we've learned, and a friend of mine likes to call it the first attention, meaning what we've given our attention to in this day and this time, we can't carry that negativity over into the next phase of our lives. We must relinquish that. And basically what that is talking about as far as baggage is your sins. You have to get rid of them. You have to remove them. In this place that some call utopia, some call heaven, some call the hereafter, some call the everlasting of peace. Well, all of this is right here on earth. So you can't take that mindset into that reality that's coming. Or actually it's here. You just don't realize it because it hasn't become your reality yet. I'm living in that reality because it all starts from a state of mind. That's why in the word when it talks about let this mind, Christ-like mind, be in you. Because you have to have a renewing of your mind. So when you're getting your second phase of life, which is your spiritual phase of life, then what that's basically saying is you're starting to see things on a deeper conscious level, coming out of the subconscious and sometimes unconscious mind. Because this is all about the mind and what the mind is capable of doing. Because the mind is where the ideals and the information are implanted. All right? Now, so as Jesus said when he spoke 2,000 years ago, the yoke is easy, meaning you to get next to him and to connect with him. I'm an open book. You know, I'm here if you want to listen to what I'm sharing with you. I'm here if you want to become a better person. I'm here if you want to connect and learn about who I is. That's what Jesus was saying. That's the exact same thing I'm saying right now. These messages that I has me producing for you are here for you so that you can in turn become a better person by studying these messages. All right? I'm a baby in this. Okay? So I don't have someone that I went to some type of theologian school or missionary school or any of that. I'm self-guided by I. So there's no one that I went to. To be honest, when I was a child in school, I didn't even like speaking in front of people. So for this to be my reality and my purpose of life, It's quite shocking to me, but that's why we plan and I plans. But when you submit to a will, you do what you're called to do, regardless. It has nothing to do with anyone else. It's your purpose, and the purpose is the will of I. And because it's I will, it becomes my purpose. If it's my purpose, then I'm only living my destiny. And that's what I walk in, and I walk into it. Now, the second part of this that I wanted to talk about, because I believe I kind of got you to understand about the yoke part. And meaning yoke, meaning I'm here, my yoke is easy, you can connect with me. Now, the labor or the burden, my burden is my truth. And when I'm speaking truth, there'll be people that don't want to hear it, because it's going to be in contrary to what they believe their truth is. Yesterday I spoke about Christianity, and I spoke about Jesus. All right? And I want to say it in this manner, because today I'm going to speak about Muslims in the Nation of Islam. No one's exempt from it if there's something that is not truthful in what's being stated. And it must be challenged. And in order for it to be challenged, then that's the only way through dialogue do we reach a conclusion, whether it's right or wrong. Now, once you get the answer and you find out that maybe your answer was not the truth, then at that point in time you have a decision to make, whether you're going to follow the truth or you're going to stay in the lie. It's kind of like Lot's wife when she was pulled out, but they told her don't look back, and when she looked back, quote unquote, turned into a pillar of salt. Just means she preserved herself in that same state of mind and she never moved forward. Alright, so now I want to speak about the Nation of Islam, but I want to go back to how I became introduced. But before I do that, I was about to speak about how with the Jews, I want to say this in this manner, with the Jews who are the Orthodox Jews, those Jews don't believe that Jesus 2,000 years was the Messiah or the Christ, and they are correct. And as I'm segueing into the Nation of Islam and speaking of Muslims, the Orthodox Muslims don't believe that Farad Muhammad is the Mahdi, and they're right. So I'm looking at the way both parties are here. You have the Jews who are part of the Christian, Judeo-Christian world, because the Bible and the Old Testament, New Testament has to do with Christians and Jews. And then you have the Orthodox Muslims, Sunnis, and I don't know them all, forgive me. And the Nation of Islam are at odds because they believe two different things. One believe that the man did not come, and the other side believes that he did come. So what happens is there causes a division, and it causes a split in what they call their religions. All right. So I want to speak on Prophet Muhammad. I think it's 1800 years ago or somewhere around there. I'm not sure. It was like the last millennium. He came. It might be about 1815. So when Prophet Muhammad came, he came to a people then. And in the end of the Old Testament, it talks about, I believe the book is called Malachi. It says, "Behold, I will send you Elijah, and Elijah will change the heart of the children back." Well, that Prophet Muhammad, last millennium, 2 millenniums ago, is now who was Elijah Muhammad in this day, who was called Elijah Poole. They are 100% correct. He came in that spirit. All right. And he carried the name. Sometimes you'll carry the name and the function. Sometimes you won't carry the name but the function. And what I mean by but the function is when I start to go from Elijah Muhammad to Minister Farrakhan, I'm not going to have the name Gene or Wilcox or Louis Farrakhan at that point in time, because he's correlated with John the Baptist. But I want to explain first about Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad was a follower of a man by the name of Farad Muhammad. And Farad came, I believe it was like 1930, if I'm not mistaken, around that time frame. And I talked to several Muslim brothers in the nation, and I tried to dialogue with them about this. And it kind of confused me, where when they spoke about Jesus, their calendar was right and exact. They said that Jesus was 2,000 years before his time. All right? And when you say something and you're correct, then, we must submit to truth. So I totally agree with you, Muslims. But then, as far as the Nation of Islam, because this is their belief, when they speak of Farad Muhammad, they say that he is who is called the Mahdi. For those of you that are Christian that don't know who the Mahdi is, the Mahdi is the same as the Messiah, the same as the Christ. It's a title of a name of a man that comes. And this man is self-guided. Means he doesn't have a teacher. Everything that he has comes from within. Now there's two issues that I had with them stating that Farad Muhammad was the Mahdi. And that's also the issues that some of the Orthodox Muslims and other Muslims have with the Nation of Islam. And I'll explain why the Nation of Islam was developed. They have that because everything is about timing. We have to get that clear. It's about timing. The first thing is Farad Muhammad was taught by his father, Alfonso. And being taught by him, Alfonso got the elders together. And they all taught Farad Muhammad, who comes from the East. Now, if they're all together teaching him, then he's not self-guided. Let's get that clear. You are not self-guided if someone has took you by the hand and taught you the wisdom and taught you the knowledge. One that is self-guided is one that has to come out of something to go into something without the aid of anyone. There is no aid. That aid comes from inside. Who is who I teach about? Who is I? Let's clear that up. So that would be the first reason why that individual could not be that one. All right. Secondly, as I stated earlier, I said that when I spoke to many Muslims, and Minister Farrakhan speaks about it also, and when he does the calendar about the 6,000 years, well, and when you read the book, it simply tells you this. It simply says that we will be in a land not of our own for 430 years, and after that time, I will come. All right? First and foremost, the Messiah, the Christ, the Mahdi, the Jesus that they speak of, he's not two people, he's one person. So Farad Muhammad did not also carry the attributes of this one. He was not a man that had bronze skin. He was not a man that had hair of lamb's wool. He didn't have that. And I understand that they would like to try to say, well, he was the God and then Elijah was his Christ. I is the creator. I is the Holy Spirit. He was a human that came with knowledge and wisdom. They have another brother that teaches by the name of Nuri Muhammad. And he had a video that I listened to, and he called Farad Muhammad a good Samaritan. And that's exactly what Farad Muhammad is. He was a good Samaritan. He was one that came over to pour oil in our heads when the Levites, who were considered the Jews and thus others that they talk about in the book, did not want to help us. So this one, Farad Muhammad, came over and brought Islam to the West to give them understanding of that there's something greater than what you're being taught. But they coincide with each other. All right? So he was that Samaritan that came in and poured the oil in the heads. But back in that time in the 1930s when Elijah was here and Farad was here, their mindsets weren't that developed to where we are today in this age to get a greater understanding. I believe Elijah Muhammad did not go past the 3rd grade, if I'm not mistaken. So at that point in time, he wasn't in school, so his discernment wasn't great. But what was great is that he had faith in that man, and he believed in what that man was teaching, which allowed him to start the Nation of Islam, which allowed him to build off of the lessons that he was taught. You can't take that from them. You can't take that. And that was his job. That was his job. So when I'm teaching of Elijah now, Elijah came, and I seen a video with Mr. Farrakhan when he said that he had went into a event, and he was sitting way up in the balcony, and he heard Elijah Muhammad speaking, and it was like a lightning bolt to him, is the way I interpret this conversation. And that lightning bolt hit him when he said, he was splitting verbs and taking words and mixing up the words. And he said, don't pay attention to how I'm saying it. Pay attention to what I'm saying. So therefore, you can take it in that fine language that you know, and you can go and help get my people. All right? Now I'm going to stop on Farrakhan right there for a second, and I'm going to go back to him. So I want to also go to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. I was never a follower, not only use the word follower, I didn't really study Martin Luther King like that, for the simple fact that I did not believe in what he stood for as far as bringing the people together. I think the minute you try to bring people together into another person's reality, you begin to weaken the people you're trying to fit in. I call it fitting a circle in a triangle space. If this is a circle and this is a triangle, they don't fit. Not saying they can't get along, but they don't fit. You can't put that into my reality. It's kind of like us now. When I look at people, especially black men in power, I have a theory that I see sometimes is I'll see a black man, but he's speaking with a white man's tongue. And that is not, and I'm not putting a dig on anyone. Let's get this clear. I'm not going to name any names about anybody. I'm not putting a dig on anyone, but that's what happens. When you speak from your heart, see, black is not a color, it's an essence. So my tongue is black. So I speak of essence. I'm not speaking of color because black is not a color. So it's a spiritual essence that I'm coming from, and I don't compromise it, and I don't sugarcoat it. I try to be mindful of how I'm speaking and what I'm saying at all times, because I don't want to hurt feelings. But unfortunately, as the word tells you, when the truth comes, it's like a sword. It'll cut when it's going in, and it'll cut when it's coming out. But see, that's not the doing of myself. That's the doing of the word and what's been living inside you. So if it is something that's cutting you when it goes in, and then it cuts you when it's going out, then you should be grateful for the truth coming in that manner, because what it's doing is it's like making an opening so that the poison can get out of you. That's the purpose of the sword. See, the sword is the tongue. If you look at the tongue, it's shaped exactly like a sword. And the word is what it's referring to. If you take the words that I'm speaking and you take the S from words and put it in front of the W, you now see the sword. That's the purpose of that. Like I said, I apologize because I don't have a form in how I speak. I speak what comes to my mind. But I try to maintain what I was speaking on because it travels in my thoughts. Now, back to Martin Luther King. As I stated, when I didn't believe in Martin Luther King's actual movement of segregating, bringing the people together in that manner, until you have your own power first. You know, I can't go and be part of a group when we're not equal. You know, if I'm looking for justice, then how can I go to your court if I don't have my court? You know, if we're not equal, if I don't have a man to go up against your man, then I'm always going to be on a scale that's unbalanced. And there's no justice in that. And that's the purpose of what they talk about Jesus. It comes for the justice. It has to be evened. And there was no justice in what he was trying to do, because he was still going to them looking for civil rights. You can't give me something that I innately have. I have a right to be here because I created myself. So I don't need to go look to someone for any civility. As long as I'm a civil being, then I don't need to go to you for that. All right? Now, Malcolm X was a more fiery speaker. And I think with Malcolm X, although I can relate to some of his thought processes, I don't believe in the guns. I don't believe in the poster that they put out on him with the words "any means necessary," you know, and using a gun to put that in the minds of the people. Any means necessary is living by the word of your truth, and you, by any means, you relay your message. So had they took that gun out of his hand and shown that man speaking on a podium to people, that would have been that, because they didn't want you to see that message. So they put that message in your head with him holding some form of gun or machine gun. I really don't get into them because I know they're made for destruction, you know, in this world, in this time. So Malcolm X, his situation was, he really is the one before Farrakhan that put the nation on a platform. The problem was the people started to believe that he was outshining Elijah Muhammad, who was his teacher. And, you know, I can't speak on whether Elijah Muhammad had some form of jealousy or if Malcolm X had some form of entitlement. But somewhere in there, one of those two words intervened in somebody's heart, because that's usually what steers it. Now, I'm not saying it had to be between them two. It could have been someone in the camp of the nation. which ultimately led him to say what he said about Elijah Muhammad and expose his extramarital affairs, which then at that point in time had them turn against him. From that point, unfortunately, that man met his demise. And also with Martin Luther King, he met his demise, whom I believe is the government, because with Martin Luther King, he began to understand that where he was going wasn't the right way, and he started to speak out on it. You don't see those speeches, and you don't hear about that, but it's definitely in there if you do your research. All right. Now, both of these people, if you listen to what I spoke of yesterday, I talked about one coming in the year of 1966. He was born, who is the Messiah, who is the Christ. Now, both of these powerful speakers, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, they had a code in their names, all right? And it was their last names. Malcolm X, X meaning unknown, King was Martin's last name, Martin Luther King. So the unknown king was being born at that time, unbeknownst to the world. All of this stuff makes sense if you can hear it. Only if you can hear it. All right? The word says, let them who have ears hear. All right? So now I'll move on to Minister Farrakhan. Now, Minister Farrakhan I was 18. I was in the service. I was out on a ship. I had just graduated from high school in 1984, and I joined the military. And they flew me to Spain, and I was on my way on a ship. And we were out in the Middle East. It was during the time of them going to war. So while I'm out there on the ship, like I said, I was 18 in 1985. I'm sitting out there, and this guy, his name is Rodney, he's from Chicago, a friend of mine. He has this tape, and the tape was Power at Last, Madison Square Garden. And it was Minister Farrakhan. At this time, I had no idea who this man was. So I said, do you mind if I listen to it? So the brother gives me the tape, and I played the tape front to back, back to front. He had to come back and get the tape. And I'm praying that the same thing that happened to me some, 18 back then, talking 85, was that 33 years ago? Some 33 years ago will spark a young man today to hear someone speak with that much passion and that much fire. It awakened my conscious mind. I was what is considered green back then. My mother kept me on a tight leash. I grew up in a modest household, loving family, which was a Christian family. Although I didn't get into it, that's how I grew up. So when I first heard Minister Farrakhan, I was blown away. I was like, wow, this guy is, talking to the powers to be and is not playing. He was quite, adamant about what he was saying. And it struck my attention. It struck a chord in me. So, needless to say, I began to listen to a lot of what he was saying. I thought, he had a lot of good points. I definitely believe that he is here to do a work to awaken his people. What I do have a problem with in this is that they all believe that Farad Muhammad was that one. So I'm going to go back to Farrakhan, but I had to go there to say this. Remember I said everything must add up. In Islam, Islam is mathematics. So you can change words, but you can't change numbers. So from Minister Farrakhan and from the teachings of Farrakhan, I guess through Elijah Muhammad at this time, I had learned about this ship called Jesus. And I got the book, and I read on the book, and it talked about, our first pilgrimage here being 1555. And then I go to the Bible, and the Bible says that we must be in this land for 430 years before the promise can be answered, before I will come to us. So when I did the math, it did not equate to 1930 is when Farad Muhammad came. So that disallowed him to be that. Now, some people say in the Bibles they change it because they'll use the 400 years, but it's really 430. So I believe Minister Farrakhan started to take control of the nation or rebuild the nation, if I'm not mistaken, in 1955. So a lot of people would then try to turn around and say, well, this is the time period when that was happening. Or it could have been Elijah Muhammad. I'm not exactly sure. It's one of the two. Forgive me. Because, like I said, I listen and I have a lot in my head. So, and like I said, I don't come with notes. But in 1955, there was something substantial. I don't know if it was Elijah Muhammad or if it was Farrakhan coming into the nation in 1955. I think that might be what it was. All right. But it's not 400 years. It's 430 years. So the math of all of that was wrong. But the works and awakening the people, I'm in total agreement with. But you have to be truthful. If you can add up that Jesus was wrong to the Christians, and I'm with you on that, and I'll say it to any pastor too. But I don't choose sides. So I'm explaining to you, as they're wrong, so are you wrong. Your math must add up. All right? I just want to be clear on that. I don't take sides, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim. Truth doesn't look into religion. Truth looks into the spirit of the truth and where it comes from and the purpose of it. All right? Any Muslims want to respond and would love to, talk about this, I'm wide open for it. You have to make the numbers make sense. And even they talk about in there where in the next millennium will be that one to come. They say similar things. Like I listen to the Christian world talk about how Jesus is going to come back in a cloud. But I'll hear the Muslims mock them. And then I listen to the Nation of Islam side say that Farad Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad is on a wheel in the sky. And they're going to come back, or it's a city with many windows. And probabilities. I spoke of this yesterday. What is the probability of that being true? Where this spaceship is what it's basically called, UFO, that's out circling the earth with two men that was once here flying around. The probability of it is not strong in my mind. So therefore, it would be impossible for me to believe that. Now, sure, I see what people may call online, or sometimes you'll see unidentified objects. But you got to understand, the government has been doing that stuff for years. They've been doing that for years. Holograms and things of that nature. So, sure, you can see that stuff. But it's not landing here. Even when I was in the military, I was out in a place, I think it's called 51, Area 51 in Fallon. And they had this top secret place. This type of stuff we have to go beyond. But anyway, back to Minister Farrakhan. It's time for you to know who that man really is. He is who is called John the Baptist in the Bible. He's not that John. He just carries the same spirit. All right? I'm going to show you how it all correlates. John the Baptist 2,000 years ago came before the Christ, who they call the Christ, Jesus. All right? He wasn't the Christ, but he came before Jesus. Let me say it that way. Now, John the Baptist was a student of Elijah. It does not talk about it in the book, but you have to understand, after Elijah left the scene and the New Testament came on, who was the next man? It was John the Baptist. And then after John the Baptist, then there's one that comes after John the Baptist, who was considered that Jesus 2,000 years ago. Well, what's happening now is history is beginning to repeat itself. You have a historical one, and now you have prophetical ones. So that Elijah that learned from Farad Muhammad was carrying the spirit and doing the works of the Elijah 2,000 years before him. All right, so he was like a sign. This was all giving us a sign of what was about to happen. So when he came, he began to prepare people and teach. Same thing with that Elijah with the Nation of Islam. He brought something different. Same thing with that Elijah. He brought something different with John the Baptist. So now Farrakhan, who comes on the scene after Elijah in this time period, he takes on the exact same spirit that John the Baptist had. He's going through the exact same things that John the Baptist had. And what I mean by that is going up against the government, going up against the Jews, baptizing the people. And what I mean by baptizing is not something that you dip someone in the water and bring them up. Baptizing is when you place a weighty word of spirit on someone and it renews them and it changes them to be a different purpose. That's when you're being baptized. It's almost, it's a you know what it is? It's a bathing in the word. That's the best way to say it. When you're being baptized, you're being bathed and you're being immersed in the words that are being taught and brought forth from that person. So Minister Farrakhan, who is an eloquent orator, speaker, and very captivating and very versed, he has been going up against the Jews, going up against the government, the same way John the Baptist was going up against them. The exact same way. And he has a tape out, and I believe the title of it is Make Straight the Path in the Desert for the Lord. So he's doing his job for the people here. The only problem with that is he believes somebody was somebody that they were not. And if anybody can send him the tape and he'd like to speak, it would be a pleasure to sit down and speak with them. But we have to go from truth. Your numbers have to add up. So I don't believe in, if you're the head of this or you're the head of that someone's untouchable to speak to. We all are people, so therefore we all carry truth in us, and I only walk from I's perspective. Let's take the Pope, for example. That Catholic belief and what it's done to these children, it surprises me to this day that it's still thriving, which tells me that there is a severe trauma in the heads of people when you can molest so many people under your reign. And I don't mean the actual, who they call the father there. I don't mean him. I'm just talking about completely. Had someone done something so severe because it's a business, someone done something so severe in a business, you'd have to shut that business down with all that tragedy. But see, you can't bankrupt that. And because you can't bankrupt it, and because it's backed with so much finance, it's hard for it to be removed. That's why only I can destroy that. but they're destroying it within themselves. I mean, even for the popes to call themselves the vicars of Christ, meaning one standing in the place of Christ. You don't have the ability to stand in the place of anyone, because when that one comes, he's coming for what is rightfully given to him. You don't control that. But this is why your church is being exposed now. This is why these lies from these people who are considered prominent people are being exposed now. And the people are being caught up in your webs. You know, Jesus says something, and what he said was, when he talked to Peter, he said, you know, being a fisher of men, you know, come follow me, and I'll show you how to cast your net in the sea and gather fish. There's a play on words there that you need to understand about. Internet. How are you listening to me at this point in time? On the internet. And I'm using this internet to convey truth to you and to be a fisher of the ones that are looking for the truth and that are ready to change their lives. So those of you who wants to be a fisherman of truth, or a fisher being for beings, then share these messages. Take them to your pastors, take them to your ministers, take them to your churches. Let them hear it. I'm not hard to get in touch with. You can simply inbox me and say, look, I'd love to meet with you, sit down, but I will tell you this, I don't do private meetings. All right, we're not going to do a private meeting, so after that meeting's done, you can walk away. I've sat with numerous preachers, and we'll go, and after I spoke to someone in a congregation, and we'll go in their back room and we'll have a conversation, and in that conversation, I'll expose their points, but then they don't want to talk to me anymore. But they've never said that they would come out and have a discussion with me face to face. I mean, it happened in the days of Jesus. It definitely happened where he would meet with another person that was speaking, and then when they spoke, whoever had, that's how him and Peter got close. That's how him and some of the other disciples became close, because they were also people teaching the word. It just so happened that the word that they were teaching was not as powerful as the message that he was delivering. So then they started to call him rabbi, meaning teacher. You know, all his job, like I said in the beginning, his burden is light, and the light is the truth that he's trying to give. He's letting you know, my yoke is easy. It's not hard to get in touch. If you're looking to be freed from this society's woes. It's that time now in this world that the wise ones know it. So any preacher, pastor, and I'm not shy of saying any names. I believe it was almost a year ago, a guy by the name of Geno Jennings in Philadelphia. The Bible said, write a letter to the church of Philadelphia. And he was the one that was out there speaking and talking of Christ and saying what he, feels and believes, which I totally respect. And I left a letter and I told him I'd like to speak with you on, you're saying that you know the Christ and what you're saying is truth. Then I'd love to sit down and speak with you. Now, he's one that believes like I do, which I totally agree about. I don't want to do anything in the privacy. If we talk, let's talk in front of the people. There's nothing to be hidden anymore. Let's speak straight up, online, in a public place. It doesn't matter to me at all. If you go back about 2 or 3 weeks ago on these classes, there was a brother, Apostle Terrence. He came and he sat down with us. But it was a couple of us there, so we really didn't go back. It was more like a cordial conversation. But I want to sit down with him also, and let's decipher what you're teaching. You know, as the word says, what are you feeding my flock? What are you teaching the people? And no one's exempt from that. If you're teaching truth, then we agree on it. If you're teaching a lie, then there's your problem. And you must be held accountable. I don't care what you're in charge of. That goes from the Pope throughout Christianity. In the Nation of Islam, that goes from Minister Farrakhan on down. In the Jewish community, whoever your highest rabbi is. In the Muslim community, whoever your imam is. If it's not the truth, then we need to stop teaching it. You know, this is what it talks about as people being sheep. If you're a sheep and you're being led, it's sad because some of these people, not all of them that I'm referring to, but some of them are using the people. You know, and for what purpose? If you know something that's true, and if it's going to be exposed, are you ready to denounce it? So when I'm speaking to people, I don't want to speak to the small ones. I want to speak to the heavy hitters. I'll speak to the small ones too. But let's get straight to it. Let's speak to those that's at the top. Let's speak to those that, are speaking about things and affecting a lot of people. If you are saying something that's wrong to the people, one thing that I do know about people is if you come up and earnestly say you were wrong in what you did, then there is a great chance you can be forgiven. But it must come from your heart. People aren't dumb. We may be lazy because we want everybody to do the work for us and not do the work for ourselves. That's where we are laden. We like to lay down and you just tell us what you want to tell us. Anything I say to you, anything that I talk about, go back and research it. I'm not saying that I'll never say something that's not right. That will never happen out of my mouth. I can't say that because I may say something and I may not have delved into it deep enough. But what I've been saying here and now, I stand on it 100%. I stand on it. These people 2,000 years ago wasn't the Messiah. Farad Muhammad, 1930 era was not the Mahdi. I completely stand on that stuff. So let's start dialoguing. Let's start getting online. If you got pastors or if you got ministers or if you got anyone that's interested in sitting down and speaking online with myself, inbox me, whatever you do on these things. I'm not really versed on these, Facebooks and line stuff. I don't do that much. But this is a tool that I is given. It's used as a net to hurt people, but it's also been given to use as a net to help save people from the situations that they're in. So they've ensnared us with this net by putting all type of negativity on there. So now we're going to use this for positivity. One day, don't get me wrong, once this message starts to reach the proper people and do what it's supposed to do, they're going to probably try to shut it down. But you can't stop the truth. At the end of the day, it's going to live. We've lived this lie too long. If there's any questions, I was looking there and wanted to see if anyone had any questions or any statements they'd like to make. Brother Miguel, Brother Shanti, I appreciate you brothers because it's us brothers. It's us that's going to take to build this. and be the righteous ones. You know, one person can't do it by themselves. You know, I can hold the match, but I need the concrete to stretch the match on to light the fire. You know, that's the foundation. And the foundation is the people that you surround yourself with and the people that you grow with. But we're growing in honesty. See, where I come from, there's not one bigger than the other. See, if you really knew this, there's no hierarchy in this case. Jesus was what? A servant. The Christ is a servant. The Messiah is a servant. That one comes to serve. That's why it says, my cup runneth over. The plate is full. So you can't give him anything but time and attention so that he can try to share with you, so you can then find out who you are, so you can then be on a point of accountability with yourself. You know, I'm just thinking that, you know, the person that I thought about earlier was Tupac. And I was walking with brother, and we were talking earlier while we were getting our exercise in. And it's amazing how, you know, he had a dual life, but when he was trying to do the right thing and try to live the right thing, his message wasn't really being received in the very beginning. But then when he turned and joined Death Row and became raunchy and wild, then his message was received. Then the man's life was gone in a matter of no time. Now everybody wants to go back and hear the message. I spoke about this yesterday. Stop waiting for people to be eternally dead in the ground. Dialogue. You can't dialogue with a dead person. You can't do that. So stop waiting for that to happen. You got time to talk. You got time to build. Do that now. Although we may not be spiritually alive, but you're spiritually dead at this point. You're physically alive, but spiritually dead. So we have to wake up the spiritual side of you. So my thinking, this is my personal thinking. My thinking is, those of you that hear this message, those of you that have a pastor or a rabbi or a minister that is about speaking truth and about wanting to do what's right for the people, unbeknownst to themselves, these people are self-serving people who put themselves, not that you put yourself second, but you see your brother. This is about brotherhood and sisterhood. So what I'm doing, it's not just for myself, although I reap the benefit of it because then I connect myself to my brothers and sisters. Because we're doing this for who I teach of, who is I. We must bring I forth. And this is why the truth must come out. It may sound like I'm attacking the Christians. It may sound like I'm attacking the Nation of Islam. It may sound like I'm attacking Jews. It may sound like I'm attacking the Orthodox Muslims. It may sound like I'm attacking people that live in the streets. Listen, I'm not attacking anyone. Let's get that clear. I'm speaking the truth about the situation. So don't try to minimize what I'm saying one day by using the word attack. Because if you can tell, my tone and my voice has never changed. Has never changed. So, I don't get emotional about this. I get uplifted, but not emotional. I heard this one time, emotion overrules intellect. And when you're trying to help a people to become who they actually are in life, then you don't have time to be slipping on your intellect. This is why I don't smoke. This is why I don't drink. This is why I don't curse. This is why I don't steal. This is why I don't do the things, fornicate. This is why I don't do that. Because I want to stay on my rock that I'm on. So that if any given time something comes my way, I'm aware of it. I'm fully focused. You know? So you can't come and you can't try to give me your girl. When I say this, I'm talking about these are the tricks in life that those that are high up in the world know what they do. You know, I'm talking our culture right now. Look at Eazy-E. You think that man died of AIDS by his own will? You know, my belief is that female was planted because they wanted his money. So they needed to get him out of there. Think about this stuff. You can't let people come into your life and make decisions for your life. You have to be accountable, as I said earlier, and I'll say it over and over. Today is the day that you become an accountant for whom you are. I'm going to share with you what I mean by that. There talks about a time when there's going to be what is called Armageddon. Armageddon is when if those of you that don't know what Armageddon mean or may have heard something, I'm going to explain to you what it means. Armageddon is when we're coming in the form of duality. We have a positive and a negative integer within ourselves. When you begin to challenge your negative side, you've now entered a war within yourself. And now you're in what is called Armageddon. Now, that word is also broken down. You have the first three letters, A-R-M, meaning to arm. In the Bible, it talks about put on your armor, protect yourself. All right? Then the next three letters are GED. Some people know it as General Education Development. All right? So what you just need is a general education to develop. All right? And then the third one is called Don. Don is another word for teacher. So in this form of Armageddon, there's going to be one that's a teacher that comes to give you a general education for your development so you can arm yourself. Protect yourself from the woes. Exactly what I was just speaking of. Brothers and sisters, it is our time. We must wake up. We must begin to think of our true purpose. Why are you here? I used to always wonder that. Why am I here? What is my purpose? You know, no omnipotent being, all-seeing, all-knowing, who I teach of as I, would create us without a true purpose. Without a true purpose. My purpose isn't to get up and go work for somebody every day. My purpose isn't to go drink every night. My purpose isn't to go lie, steal, and cheat. That's not my purpose. What is my real purpose? But before we can get to the purpose, we have to go through the battle. You're just not being given a purpose, and you haven't even been through the war yet. See, I can't say you're not going to give them the purpose. The reason we're here is for I's namesake. Those of us that are the children of I. We're here to spread I's name, to come to know who I is. So you'll know who you are. You'll never know who you are until you know who I is. That kingdom that lives within, that's the I. Always with you. You know how they talked about when that day of Armageddon, which I just spoke of, and then there's going to be a recording of the deeds. and everybody has going to be called up and have to be accountable for who they are and what they've done? Who's the only one that's been with you the whole time? If you don't say your name, in place of your name, you say I. I believe the Bible says it, where there are 2 or 3 gathered in my name, there I am. So the only name that 2 or 3 are gathered in, unless there's 3 or 4 Kevins at the same time, or 3 or 4 Mikes at the same time, then the only other name that they agree on is I. So I is the reason that myself is on here speaking to you, because I want you to be able to know who I is. And the brother Ashant asked, can we speak on the states of consciousness? Absolutely. You have basically an unconscious state of mind and a conscious state of mind. All right? And for myself, I'll speak for myself. If I allow myself to slip into that unconscious state of mind, it means I'm subjecting myself to the lower natures of myself. It's kind of like when I talked about earlier when I said I don't become emotional, or I try not to become, is the best way to say it. I try not to become emotional because it will overrule my intellect. Well, that's the same thing with your conscious and unconscious. When something's being done, if you jump into it and you're in a conscious state of mind, then you can fall into an unconscious state of mind, because it's just like it'll flip your switch right over to the other side. And then you find yourself doing something, and after you come out of it, you don't know why you did it. And this is where who I teach of the spirit of the negative one is waiting for us. When we become at a state of nothingness, or we're not being focused on who we are or what we're doing, it's all about remaining focused in your conscious mind. You must remain focused. The minute you begin to lose focus, it's the same thing as losing balance. So, consciousness and unconscious is the same to me as balance and being unbalanced, which is back to justice, back to the scales. If the scales aren't even and they're unbalanced, then you're not focused, you're not in the right state or the right realm. So, and excuse me for putting on my glasses when I do. I can't read small writings, unfortunately. So, I'm conscious right now. And it's simply meaning that I'm awake. As for the unconscious, it means that you're asleep. Let me explain what I mean by that. You can physically be around someone and be asleep, meaning unconscious. Although you're talking and walking, but you're asleep, because the conscience is the spiritual awakening. The flesh is more where we deal on an unconscious level, because we're doing the fleshly things. When we're doing the spiritual things and living by the spiritual means and the spiritual ways, then we're in the conscious state of being. We're in the awakening. I was about to say something. I'm trying to think how I was going to word it, but it comes like light in and out of my mind so fast sometimes, and that's why sometimes you'll hear me jump from one thing to another thing, because I want to get that and then go back to it. But it's a scripture that I was thinking about in the Bible. Okay, here it is. It's a scripture where it talks about the dead. All right. They say they have eyes, but they can't see. They got ears, but they can't hear. They got a mouth, but they can't speak. or a tongue, excuse me, but they can't speak. Well, you have all of these things, you're living, but they have no power in them. So what it's saying is you're physically alive, but because you don't have that I, which is that current to produce that power in you, you're not physically producing, you're not spiritually producing anything in the physical form. So we're physically walking around here like zombies. It talks about how these people that are in the grave, well, at that day they talk about this trumpet being blown and they'll be awakened. All right. First of all, and I'm not the only person that's ever said this, but and it's true, so I have to share it like they share it because I see it the same way. There's no one in the ground when that day comes and that trumpet is going to be blown. Let me explain to you. I'm trying to get this trumpet thing down to you. That trumpet is more like a sound that you'll hear in your head to create change. Sometimes when people talk, you'll almost hear like a whistling sound coming through. So it's almost like that trumpet lining you up, getting you prepared. So when you hear that trumpet being blown, nobody knows when that trumpet's going to be blown in your own personal head. It's coming from the sky of your mind. Not meaning that there's going to be a trumpet outside in the sky one day and everybody's going to be walking around and you're going to hear do-do-do-do. No, that's not what that means. The trumpet is in the sky of your mind. And when you get to that elevation of that consciousness and you begin to think about what's really going on, kind of like what I'm talking about, to awaken you, then you start hearing that trumpet go off in your mind. A lot of times they'll use trumpets and instruments to start a race back then. They'll blow the horn to get the race started because at that, it's almost like a form of awakening is what the trumpet is a symbol of. So the people that we have right now that's walking around, they got TV shows out talking about the Walking Dead, and then you got vampires and zombies. These are all forms of people that they're talking about in an unconscious state. They're in an unconscious state. So when the brother says speak about consciousness, is that people think that they're alive. And they are physically, don't get me wrong. But the physical life is not what this is about. Remember what I said earlier. It was about finding your purpose. And the purpose is your spiritual life. To find out why I made you. That's the purpose. What is my job in the hereafter, in the heaven, in the utopia, whatever name you want to put on it? What is my job when I comes? What does I want me to be doing for I's purpose? And if you think what I'm saying about when I speak of I is strange, just think about it. Just think about this. Everything around you is now turning into I. The most popular phone is the iPhone. Then you got iPad. Now they talk about this iCloud where all the information is stored. iChat, iTV, iMattress, IMAX Theater. Everything is turning into I. Everything. iStore, iCar. Think about it. This is not by chance. See, when you're spiritually awake, you can see these things. But the ones that are unconscious and that are asleep in the spiritual sense, but moving around the physical sense, can't see the life to the death because of the death that they're living in. You have to remove that unconscious state. It's like, me and my brother, it's like us getting up and going to the gym. I'm preparing myself for my day of consciousness. So when I'm working out and I'm walking and I'm talking and I'm thinking, I'm focusing and I'm getting that oxygen. Let me explain this to you. I'm getting that oxygen to my brain, which is the endorphins, which are the receptors that begin to move around and keep me on a grounded and focused level. This isn't something that I do today and I don't do it for 4 days. Trust me, I've done that. And I've noticed that all that did was create me to be more and more lazy. So you must create a lifestyle where you're taking care not only of your mind, but you got to take care of your body. Then you got to take care, which will then create your soul. So we have to take care of these things. Only person that can get you up to do what you need to do is you. All I can do. And anytime you hear me speak, so I wanted to be plain that every time you hear me talking, I'm dropping seeds in you. Some may call it jewels. I'm putting them in you. And then hoping that it will begin to grow a root. I heard this the other day. I was listening to someone speak from the Nation of Islam. It was a beautiful point. I think Elijah Muhammad had taught this to Minister Farrakhan a while back. I heard him say it. It says, when a seed is dropped in the ground, before you see what it produces, it must first grow roots. And I thought that was so eloquent. And it's true. You know, before any seed produces the flower, it must grow roots first. And that's what, you know, I'm doing at this point and at this time when I'm sharing and building with you. I'm laying seeds. And for those of you that can hear what I'm saying, not with the ears up here, but in your heart, if you take the H and you take the T off, you'll see the word ear. That's the ear that I'm trying to speak to, the one in your heart. Because when you place it in your heart, and it's in your heart to do it, most of the time nothing can stop you. Because you've put it in your heart to do it. And you're bleeding it now. You're living for it now. This is where I am now in my life. You're seeing the beginning of my beginning. Although I've been this way for 18 years, you're now seeing it. Because it's time for me now to reveal and to talk and share why and who I am in I's purpose. I'm sent by I to awaken the people. Listen to what I say. Go back and listen to what I've been sharing and talking about. This didn't start, I started sharing back in November. It took 9 months for me to actually visually come on the screen because I never wanted to be about myself. I'm a humble person. I'm not a weak person. Let's get this clear. I'm a humble person. I'm not a scary person. Let's get this clear. In other words, let's not confuse humility in this world. And I say that because I want you guys to understand that to be humble doesn't make you weak. It brings strength and character. And I'm not humble because I'm walking around wanting somebody to think that I'm humble. That's my nature. That's my actual nature. My mom's husband, he tells me this story all the time. He's like, you know, your mom used to tell me when you was like 11, 12 years old, I saw this guy, Matson Run, where I grew up at. I saw this guy at Matson Run back in 70, good gracious, it had to be like 78. About 78. It's about 12 years old. I saw this guy out there and he looked homeless and he didn't have any shoes. And my mom said that I ran home. Well, when we went home, I immediately went in the house and I grabbed a pair of shoes and I took them and I rode back down there and I gave the guy my shoes. You know, that's the character. So it's nothing new what I'm doing and how I am. This is who I am. You know, at 12 years old, I was that way. And nothing has changed. all I want to do is help my brother and help my sister. You know, because what greater joy is it to see your fellow being become who they are and why they are, and to look at them change and then to appreciate life. You know, it's a brother that's listening in now, and like I said, I brought it up the other day, but it just touches my heart when I initially was sharing with him where I was, you know, and now he's there, and now he sees it. To hear him and to hear our conversations and how we can talk, and we look up like 2-3 hours then pass, and we're like, wow. But it's try the spirit by the spirit now. Now he can relate to myself, you know, and I'm thankful for and I'm just looking for more people that we can all share together. But you got to be accountable. You know, you're going to have to right your wrongs. You know, myself can't judge you. So never look at that. Never look at that. I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm here trying to help you get yourself right for what's about to happen. Anything, and this is what I like to share to people. Whatever your biggest sin is, it's almost like the bully theory when you go to a new school, or the big bad person, and you know they're going to pick on you, and you got all the little ones around. So what do they say? They say go up to that Billy and bop that one first. If you knock that one down, all the rest will fall in line. It's the same thing with the sins. One of my biggest sins was drinking. Oh, I'd love to just sip. I drink, and you know, I classify myself at that point in time as an alcoholic, but not to that degree of an alcoholic, but an alcoholic, if you understand what I mean. Like, I never lost anything through it, but I liked to drink at that time. So I had to knock that in the mouth. I had to deal with that side of me. I had to deal with that sin and that habit that I had created in myself. And then I had became codependent on. You know, I didn't drink every day, but when I drank, I didn't drink just to, you know, take a couple sips. I drank to feel like high, like I feel now. You know, because innately inside me, I knew that I was something or someone. So when those of us that, you know, most of us that use these drugs, it's because you want to be high. You want to be somewhere feeling like you're something, but you're chasing the wrong high. I gave me this a while ago. I said, don't chase the high, chase I. I am the one that will give you that high. And I hear I in my ear, and I gave me a message. 2000, right around when I was changing. And I'll never forget it. And I'm sitting in the car. And as I'm sitting in the car, for some reason I don't have on any music. And I'm coming down the road, and I hear my name. And it says Duran. And I look to my left, and I look to my right, although I did it backwards here, excuse me. And I say, yes, because there's no one there. But like you hear my voice, this is how I heard it. And then I said, why is it that people pay their car notes and their house notes, but they don't pay their debts to me? I'm going to repeat that because this is exactly what I wants me to ask you. I said to myself, ask them, why is it that you pay your car notes and your house notes and you don't pay your debts back to I? And at this time, I did not know I's name, so I would use the title God or Father at that time. So I responded, I do not know why, Father. And then I said, but when it's my time, I will ask them. This is the full conversation. Now that I'm where I am today, and at this time, 18 years later, I can play all of that back and see what all of that meant and understand it. So now, not only can I ask the question, I can also bring dialogue to expound on what was being done. First and foremost, remember I said it was a plain conversation like you hear my voice. Okay? And if someone ever says that they heard who you may call God or Jehovah or whatever, I don't doubt what anyone says. But what I do is I pay attention to what they are saying and what they're doing. You know, if somebody says that, okay, yeah, well, God told me to go blow up the thing. I don't know what God you talking about. I don't know what you talk, because that's not what that would tell you. That's not the spirit realm. So you got to be mindful when you hear people say that. So my message that was given to myself was just a simple question. The question is, why is it that you pay your car note and your house note and you don't pay your debts back to I? And I said, because I am the one that gave you life, which is a very, very valid question. Why do we take care of these debts that take over the sovereignty of who you are, but the real sovereign one over our souls is who we don't pay our debts back to? Now, some of you may wonder what that means, because those of you that go to mosque, those of you that go to church, well, the first thing they tell you is they say, get these sins up off you and pay your debt, tithing, whatever the case may be. But they equate sins and tithing and debt with money. Well, I assure you this, you can't pay I with money or credit card or any type of such instrument of physical. See, I doesn't want that. I want you to pay your debt of sins. See, you've accumulated debt through sins. The word says that sins are the wages of death. Listen to what it says. Sins are the wages. How do you get paid when you go to work? You want to ask the people, what is my hourly wage? What is, if I'm salary, what is my monthly wage? My yearly wage? That's the money side, the monetary side. But sin also carries a wage. This is truth, what I'm saying to you. Listen to what I'm saying to you. That wage that I is talking about is your sin. So now, okay, if you want me to pay my debt to you, then how do I pay my debt? The only wages you have is your sins, your wages of death. So what you're doing is you're taking your wages of sin, which is death, and you're giving them back. And then I is paying you after you. That's when you're being reimbursed. Once you take the negative out of it, the wages of death out, then I pays you with wages of life. I like to call them waves of life, because I'm just riding along now, nice and smooth. But you gotta pay your wages back. Understand, that's what must be done. Alright? I'm not going to stay on here too much longer. As I said, I can talk and talk and talk forever. The one thing that I do want to say is if you got people, pastors, ministers that would love to dialogue with myself, please tell them. Let's sit down and talk. It's a couple pastors here. I'm in the state of Delaware. It's a couple pastors here, some that I knows and some that I've run into. They talk a good talk, but they've yet to say, let's sit down and talk. So, let's see if we can get some of these people to be accountable for what they say. And if they believe what they say, and you know what you say is the truth, then at that point in time, there's nothing that can stop you. I always equate it in this manner. You know who the best basketball team is. You know who the best football team is. You know who the best boxer is. You know who the fastest individual is. How do you know who these things are? It's because what happens is they must go in and go against another person. And their, their sense of accomplishment. I can't think of the word I wanted to say. But what they're good at doing. So a boxer's going to fight the elite boxers. The track stars are going to run against the elite track stars. Well, this is the same thing that must start to happen with the word, with the truth of it. We got to stop over here, you telling this and you telling that. If you guys are all Christians, why are there so many churches teaching so many different things? If you guys are all Muslims, why are there so many different mosques and you guys are teaching different things? One. Only one. Only one. You don't need all of that. It's just one. So, it's at this point in time to unify and unite the truth now. Those of you that are going to be part of truth and live by the truth, then you will be accepted by it. Those of you that want to buck the truth, then that is something that you will deal with. See, the battle's not mine. The battle's for I to deal with that individual. I'm just walking along doing what I'm supposed to do, sharing what I'm supposed to share, and planting that seed that I'm supposed to plant. And I'm seeing in my mind right now that the people that are listening and the people that will listen to these messages, how after I get done talking, it just begins to root down in them. And then one day I'll see where there's more and more people viewing these and questions being asked and people saying, hey, I started doing what you said, brother, and thank you, brother. I've changed this and I don't do this anymore. I don't do that. I've become a vegan. I don't drink no more. I'm not cheating on my wife no more. I'm not stealing. I'm not smoking. I'm not bowing, submitting to these false gods. This is my purpose. This is all that I'm here to do. That's all I'm looking for. I'm just a servant and a vessel. That's all I am, just a servant, trying to get you to understand who you really are and why you really are. It's amazing how when I'm about to stop, I just start right back up. So, but we have a class I Willing tomorrow. This would be 3 straight days, so which tells me that I is moving in myself, and I have to say this, I kind of realized something was happening because I haven't been feeling ill or kind of like sick maybe 5-10 I don't know, it's been quite some time. And like 2 weeks ago, I was really not feeling well. I even broken a little fever and caught a little congestion. I couldn't teach a class or share in a class. And then the very next week, we couldn't get the place to do the class. So in my mind, I was like, I'm being set down. But I also knew that something was coming where I felt it. I didn't know it. I felt something was coming where I was going to be moving and teaching and sharing. Like yesterday, I gotta figure out a way not to talk so long. So I want everybody to hear the message. And I don't want, I know sometimes people feel about their time that, well, I can't listen to everything the whole time. All I request that you do is, if you can't listen to the whole message, stop it, go back and listen to it later. And notice this about this message and me sharing with you. You don't see a band. You don't see anybody around me in this case. You just see myself and yourself on the other end listening. And it's just another brother talking to another brother or another sister, and I'm just trying to touch your heart. See, the word mind, I keeps feeding me information, so I keep going. The word mind, M-I-N-D, I wrote a paper by I's permission about this. It really means M-I-N-E. We become, in our minds, we become the ownership of I. We're mind owned by I. My body, my mind, my soul is the property of I. I belong only to I. You belong only to I. We belong only to I. And let me share with you what I mean by that, because I have to explain what this means. When you know I is real, understand what I'm saying? Something. The only time that you can put your whole heart, your whole mind, and your whole soul into something is when you know it's real. Or when you believe it. Some people don't know it. Some people have to go to these points of belief. But when speaking of I, it's not a belief, it's that I know I is real. You know how I know I is real? Because if I asked you who did you use to plug in your phone to listen to this message, you would, on your phone, I'd say, whose phone you said? I did it. I plugged it in. I hit the accept button. But how can everybody that's listening say that they're I? Because it's I that's real, that does it all. Now, when I said I is real, and they talk about these Jewish people over in Israel, let's get this clear. Israel. It's I-S-R-A-E-L. All right? I-S is I apostrophe S, because these are two words put together, so you understand what this means. Meaning eyes, meaning ownership, belong to. And in the dictionary, if you look up the word I, it's the only word in the dictionary that means ownership. And if when you type in something, if you notice, out of any letter in the alphabet you type in there, that's the only one that goes straight to I, capital. You can type A, B, C, D, all them letters all the way to Z. None of them jump straight to capital. When you type in I, it goes to a capital I. This is the stuff that they know. Little things like this is what tweaks people's minds to say, wow, I didn't think about it like that. You go type in a P, it won't jump to a capital P. You go type in a Z, it won't jump to a capital Z. Then type in I, it'll jump straight to a capital. Because I is first, I is one. Now, I is ownership. So now you have I apostrophe S. Then you space it. Then for Israel, it's spelled R-A-E-L. That doesn't spell real. So therefore, I don't believe in that Israel. They flipped the letters to steal. That's right, I said it. To steal your birthright. That's what's being done. So now you take and put R-E-A-L. Now you know I's real. I apostrophe S space R-E-A-L spells I's real. Now if you put I-S and R-A-L together, you see the word Israel. Now you know I's real. It's Israel. That's what they're saying. We're the children of Israel. That's why they're trying to say that they're the children. But that Israel, again, you cannot steal. And let me say this to brothers and sisters and what is that group called? They call themselves the Israelites. But it's Israelites. They're not even spelling it right. And they consider themselves the black Jews in that sense. You have to understand, we're not Jews. All right? I have to break this down so you understand what Jew is. Jew was made, and that word forms because it was actually flipped around, and they turned it to use to pronounce it as Jew. If you W-E-J means wedge. When you put a wedge in something, you divide it. That was the purpose. That's why I say stealing of the birthright, changing the name. Now, what we really are, what they did with the Jew, were really Jewel. Jewel. See, the E-L in Arabic means eye. So what they did is they took the eye out of it. And they made themselves the gods. So now you just see Jew. That's why when you meet them, they call themselves Jewish. Jewish. Now, you don't walk around seeing somebody calling themselves white-ish, black-ish, Indian-ish, Mediterranean-ish. Why is that? Because it's a type of people that have stolen the identity. I'm going to break another word for you down. In their places of worship, it's called synagogue. Now, if you break it down, it's spelled sin, O, God. Look at it, sin. Forget the Y, S-I-N. Remember what it says, I and Y, they change it. Just giving you a heads up on it. So they took the I out because I wasn't allowing that. So they put the Y there, so sin, O God. Now, I teach about this O God because this O God is zero God, is what I call it. Has no power, has no force. All through your Bible, you see, O God, O Lord. It has no power. And that's why I is teaching me to teach you so that you can find out what you're actually following. And come out of it. That's why the word says, come out of it, my children. For Babylon, for that Israel, for these negative worlds, they're falling. Every day they're falling. And there's nothing that they can do about it. The only thing that they're trying to do is grab you and take you with them. Break free. I promise you. I teach sins or coats that people put on. So what I mean by that is they're trying to grab you and take you with them. If you got a coat on and you got a coat of sin of alcoholism, you have a coat of sin of drug addiction, you have a coat of sin of a pedophile, or you have all of these different sins, you got to come out of that. So take that coat off. Will a pedophile be in the hereafter? They have the opportunity to, just like a murderer has the opportunity to. A pedophile, should they reap some of them? That's I's decision. That's not my personal decision. My personal, I will not give. But that's between them and I. But if someone was doing something and they came into the light and they never did it again and they began to live the right life and do what's right, should they be accountable for them sins? It's how I works it. Because let's think about it in this way. Not one of us is free of sin. And you must look in this manner. No sin is greater than the other. Now, we will personally put our own idea, yeah, this is way worse than that. I totally get that. But a sin is a sin. That's why you have to stop sinning, period. So if this person who was, like I said yesterday, I believe, had murdered someone, and here I have somebody who's been going to church all their life, and that person that's been going to church all their life don't want to take the message and don't want to do what's right and get rid of them sins that they have, and here this person over here that was a murderer says, you know what you're saying is true. I need to change my life. I need to do what I'm supposed to do and be accountable for everything and stop this debauchery that I'm in. And every time you come into truth and come into reality, you accept it and you put it in as a lifestyle and a change, then that person is going to be the one admitted in. Not this person over here. I don't care if you've been going to church since you was 15 years old and you're now 50. If you're holding on to those old ways, you're not getting in. I don't know why people don't get it, but the word says, I make all things new. You have to be made new. You can't bring that old stuff over here. Can't do that. Why do you think I had to transform my old ways to this? I couldn't stay that person I was. If I did, how could I speak to you? I would be a hypocrite. I'm not going to be a hypocrite for nobody. I'm going to walk my talk and talk my walk. There's no two sides about it. If I'm saying it, I'm living it. I'm not looking for someone to look at me and say, wow, and boost me up. Can't boost me up. I'm a humble individual. I know the credit's not my credit. This is how people get boosted up. This is how these preachers and ministers and athletes and these people, they become these negative gods. Because they begin to think it's them. And that's because they don't know who I is. They really don't know themselves. Because if you knew your true self, you would never be disobedient to the spirit that placed the life in you. You'd fix it. You correct it. And if you ever made a mistake, trust me. Trust myself when I say this to you. It weighs on your conscience. It weighs on you. And you have to immediately start to begin. Well, you don't have to. But the way it works, you immediately start to begin to think about, wow, I got to do better. I got to be right. So I try not to go outside of the lines and parameters of my life. See, right now, there's no lines in most people's lives. There's no, you have not put yourself in the perimeter. That doesn't mean that I'm limited. Because I'm limitless. But I'm limited, I'm limitless in a structure. If I wanted to eat all day, if I wanted to just go steal all day, there's no structure there. So you have to have structure. If I wanted to go drink all day, all of these things, all of these negative things have recourses that follow after them if you do them. Not saying that it'll happen tomorrow. You got people that have cirrhosis of the liver from drinking. Later on, they was drinking for 15, 20 years. And you got people that's been smoking cigarettes. Well, yeah, of course, it's not going to kill you that very day. But then 15, 20 years later, you got cancer in your body. And then you wonder how it happened. And the sad thing is that some of these people, when they go to the doctor and they find out that all of this is going on, the next thing that they do is they say, well, look, we don't want you to drink anymore. We don't want you to smoke anymore because this could, lose your life. Well, some people feel so gone and less of a being at this point in time, they become hopeless. So they don't care. I'm still going to drink. I'm still going to smoke because they're trying to find a way out now. Because they don't want to deal with the problem that they created. They've been so weakened that it's detrimental to them to try to change now. And that's what's wrong. We got to stop being so stubborn and hard-hearted and stiff-necked to try to change our ways. Quit thinking you know what you're doing when you really know you don't. You really know. And you know it because some of us, not all, some of us innately feels it and within us. Like when you're doing wrong. If somebody's cheating, they know that they're doing wrong. If somebody's drinking, they know that they're doing wrong. Especially if they're drinking period. But, some don't think it's wrong. But there's those that know that it's not right for your body. You know the outcome in the long run. But what we do is we try to psych ourselves out and say that that's not the case. It's not going to happen to me. All right. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're wrong. But here's my point. It's not a day and time for you to be taking that chance on your life. You know what I mean? Because you only get one. You get one life. One life. And I'm here to tell you right here and right now, If you've never heard this, hear me and hear me clearly. We are able and we are built to live up to 1,000 years old. I know some of you probably tuned right out. What is this guy talking about? I don't know anybody live past 120 years old. I don't know anybody live past 80. I don't know anybody live past 90. That's because that world that we're in now was created that we couldn't live that long. But this says in the word, it says that when that time comes that they will return to a ripe old age like their ancestors did. It's in your Bible. We will return to a good old ripe age like their ancestors. Type it in Google and look for it in the scriptures. It's right there. And then go back and go look and see how old Adam was, 940 years old. Noah, Methuselah, I spoke of this yesterday. Go look at this. I just want you to understand that you have a greater life, not only an abundance of prosperity, but you have an abundance of years of life. Years of life. So that we are the foundation to correct this world. We are the foundation. We are the ones here put to make what's wrong right now. And the reason why I didn't allow people to live to be 5, 6, 7, 800, 900 years old back then, after the fall of man, is because if you let someone be here for that long, then they would corrupt the whole system. So that's why I'm not sure if it's in the Quran or if it's in the Bible. And it's a time period where I says that 6 days, I'll give you, talking to the negative spirit, I'll give you 6 days to destroy the earth. And after that, I will come back on the last day and I will rebuild it. Well, that's that last 1,000 years. But then it's going to require a people to redo the rebuilding for I. So we're given it, so now we have to create a foundation to grow from. So we're going to be here longer because remember, it's been 6,000, for those who don't know, it's been 6,000 years that we've been falling. So now for us to do this in one day, we're going to be receiving an extended amount of life now. Well, it's not even extended, to be honest. We're going back to the natural habitat of life. If you go to 2 Peter 3:8, it says 1 day is as 1,000 years. So it's telling you we're built to be up to 1,000 years. And there's a time that will happen again. And you're in that time right now. That's why it also talked about in the book, it says, no, like in the days of Noah, that they will be building and partying and doing all like minds of wickedness also in evil. Well, that's this day also. And that's when you know that the Messiah and the Christ is here. See, the Christ is going to come and live amongst the people for hundreds and hundreds of years. Because he's sent here to do a job. Because he's here in place of I. For I. He's not I. I is the creator that lives in each and every one of us. But he has the spirit, which is called the anointing or the oil or the wisdom or the knowledge to build a future world. But he's not sent to build the world by himself. He's sent to build the world. But before that world can be built, he has to go to his people. He has to teach his people so that his people can begin to understand their real purpose. We're the Genesis. We're the beginning of the new people, the new Adam, not the ADAM Adam, but the ATOM Adam. That's who we are. That's the spiritual. That's the electricity. If you don't know who I is, if you don't know the spirit is the current and the electricity that runs through our bodies. The protons and the neutrons and electrons that runs through us. This is why you must clean your body up. And stop putting these animal and we're meant to live like we're meant to be vegans. Now a lot of you will tune right out. What are you talking about? Vegan? Go read in Genesis on the 6th day what we're made to eat. We're made to eat fruits and every herb-bearing seed. And we're not made to eat 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. We're made to eat once a day. Now, if you get sick or you're not feeling well, at that point in time, you can eat twice. But then you want to go back to eating only once a day. My wife sent me a text the other day. I've been like this for years. And she sent me a text the other day, and she said, "Oh, you were right. They just did a study on lab mice saying that, when that mice ate once a day, it lived longer." I learned this from the Nation of Islam. Elijah Muhammad. I read his books, How to Eat to Live, 1 and 2. Although they wrote the books, they didn't do the application of the eating. They didn't do it. So it's one thing to write something, but you have to live by what you wrote. You have to live by it. And then people are going on Ramadan. Well, Ramadan is a way of life. Eating once a day is actually how you're supposed to live. Now, with the nation, as I spoke of earlier, that's something that they instilled and they taught the people to prepare them. That's only if you want to live a longer life. It'll be days when we get to that point, especially when we start really growing and coming together as people, where you may not eat for 3 to 4 days. Because we put too much emphasis on food. Now, the water we definitely need. But we're inundated with all of this food. And if you look at it, this is why food is like the number one thing on our menus of our minds. What's the first thing when you wake up? Those of you, sometimes not even before you take a bath, brush your teeth, take a shower, first thing you want to do is get what? Breakfast. Now you got to understand what that word means. It means break fast. So the Muslims, when they're doing Ramadan, they're fasting. And they're fasting till the sun goes down, because the real day is not when the sun comes up, but when the sun goes down. So when that sun goes down, the actual next day happens. But these calendars have been confused. But it's just giving you a heads up. So the way that I eat, just to share with you how I live my life, is when that sun goes down, I'll eat a meal. Then I'll go to bed, get up. Prayerfully, I get my lazy butt up and go work out, because I'm back in the gym. Because sometimes, your body gets weary and tired. So it's a struggle sometimes. But I'll get up, I'll go work out, and then I'll conduct my day. And then I'll do the same thing over and over. I'm living my life. And when you become a vegan, let me share this with you. When you become a vegan, you eat once a day, imagine how much money you save. If you stop buying all this alcohol, if you stop going out buying all of this unnecessary stuff that we purchase, especially food. I noticed that food is probably the thing that puts people in bankruptcy as far as those that have jobs quicker than anything. Because you go to the fast food, you want to feed your children. So let's just say it's a family of 5. And you all say, okay, well, you know what? It's Sunday. We're going to go out and have dinner. Well, don't nobody want to cook. First thing you do, you guys get up, go to Friendly's, go to IHOP, whatever your choice is. And you go there, you get a $40 bill. All right. You eat, 10 o'clock come by. You go do whatever you do. Up, we're hungry again at 1 o'clock. So now 1 o'clock up, let's go to McDonald's. So you go to McDonald's, you spend another $30 there. So now that's $70 spent. All right. Now at that point in time, you still don't feel like cooking. All right, well, let's go to Olive Garden or Red Lobster, whatever your case may be. That's going to cost us another $90. So now it's $160 you just spent. Now, yesterday, I'm just going to give you what I did yesterday. I went to the market, got some fruits and vegetables, cost me like $8. I ate it yesterday, I ate it the day before, and I ate it last night. $7. And my wife ate too. All I spent was $7. And it was fulfilling. You got to start changing your mindset. You got to stop believing what everybody's telling you. Your job is to stay healthy so you can stay here. And the longer you stay here, the more wisdom you will obtain. And the more wisdom you obtain, the stronger the foundation of the youth that comes behind you. And that's our purpose. Those of us that are in my area and age group, we're the ones that should be going back and teaching our youth. But you can't teach them anything if you're not living right. They're not going to listen to you. They don't want to hear that. They don't want you talking about, oh, young boy or young girl, don't do this, don't do that. And they see you chasing the same young girl they chasing. Or they see you at the bar drinking like them. Stop doing that. You're actually killing their spirit. Get yourself right first. That's what the word says. Remove the smite from thy own eye first. And then you're not judging, you're sharing. So any little young brothers that you know, let them listen to a brother that's done that. And get in contact with me, because that's what I'm looking for. Nice young brothers that's trying to do the right thing. That feels like, not that it is, but that feels like this is hopeless out here. That feels like it. And then, put them together and get a group, text me, say, look, I got 5, 10 young brothers here, and they'd love for you to come in and sit down and speak with them, brother. I'm coming. I'm living my truth. You must live your truth. It's the only way you can be respected. And it's so real to me, because everything in my life, I just always wanted to be respected. And I always wanted to respect others. I put that very high in my criteria of life. I want to respect people, and I definitely want them to respect me, because that's what I'm going to give you. I'm not that man that if you got a female and we're talking, I'm trying to hit on your wife, or I'm trying to take your daughter. I'm not that individual where if you left $1,000 out on the table and then you had to walk out the room, that you got to come back and wonder, did he take my money? Is $80 missing? I'm not him. Because I know that I is watching me at all times. So therefore, I don't have time to be dealing with little things and weaknesses. I must stay strong, because I know that I'm being watched. And here's the deep thing that you need to understand. That the reason why we're out here running around here doing what we're doing is because we don't think we're being watched right now. Because God has been talked about so much. God this and God that. But then nothing really has happened yet. So therefore, you're thinking you're getting away with something. But I'm going to explain to you right now. You're not getting away with anything. You're not getting away with anything. Let that be known. I appreciate that, Brother Cliff. All praises are due to I. Anything that myself says, it goes back to I. But you're not getting away with anything. Let that be known. So when you realize that I's watching you, I don't care who's around, then you understand. I need to straighten up, because I can't get away from it. That's what they call the all-seeing eye. See, these things, these names, they're not saying this and not knowing what they're saying. It's just that the ones that are not awakened, are not wise to truth, they don't understand what that means. Look at it this way. Best way, this is the best analogy on how to put it. We're 10 of us online, we're all brothers and sisters. Now, mommy's home, and daddy, who's the enforcer, is not home. Daddy's out working. And mommy been telling us, when your father come home, you better get that room cleaned up, or you better do what it is, you better straighten up that yard, or you better do whatever you're supposed to do. Now, most times, you're going to run amok until you look up at that clock and you know he breaks that door at 5:30. At 5 o'clock, you're like, whew, I need to get all my chores done now because daddy's coming home. Well, see, that's how I is. Right now, you don't think I's here. But I's here. I's watching you right now. And you need to put that in your conscious mind and realize that you're being watched by I. And realize that everything you're doing is being recorded. That's why you say, me, myself, and I. I's always with you. Trust me. Get it together. Because if you look at the beginning of my page, it says, I the Coming 2018. But then in 2019, it's not going to be I the Coming anymore. It's going to be I'm here. Big difference. When something's coming and when something's here. When it's coming, you still have time. When it's here, you're in the midst of it. All right? I'd like to say peace and blessings to all. Please share this video. Hit your notification button. I guess that's what they call it. We will be speaking tomorrow. Like I said, I willing, 6:30 to 8:30. Be myself and some brothers. I hope all the brothers get a chance to come out and share and build. I'm truly thankful and appreciative of I for putting the breath in my lungs and the words in my mind to speak and share. And if I could ask I anything, I pray that it resonates in someone's heart and that seed is planted and that root is being grown underneath, so I can see when I meet people that they say, brother, you know, I listened to you and I've changed and I'm doing this now. I'm not doing that anymore. That's what I'm praying for. And that's what I'm hoping for. And that's what I see. Now, will it be everyone? Unfortunately not. But for those that the word is called on and you believe in the word, and you believe in the truth of the word, and you believe in the act of the word, then we are ones that are not speak it, but we're ones that are doers of it. I like to say peace and blessings. Amen, and all praises always to I.